my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
Tatum drives down and throws it down. Wow!
To throw, rainbows it down the right side for Kyle Pitts. He's got it. He's there. Touchdown. Oh my!
Oh my indeed. Welcome back everyone to the Sports Bits podcast with Moko, here to talk about all things Florida Gators football and Boston Celtics. Just Boston Celtics for now, but also just a quick note for the Florida side. Congrats Stan Mullen on the contract extension that apparently was signed a year ago, but we didn't know about it, of course, until we had this freedom of information thing that came out and that allowed us to learn about the contract extension. So yeah, congrats to him. Hopefully he'll do well, and that'll hopefully be able to attract some recruits in for future years, because he's guaranteed there for the next 3 years, and hopefully develop those guys and entice those guys to come there, get developed for their whole 4 years they're at Florida. But yeah, on the Celtics side, there's a lot that happened, and of course, sadly, Reed and James could not make it today, so just me riding solo today. But there's a lot to talk about. We have breaking news out of the Celtics front office that Danny Ainge retires and steps down as the GM of the Boston Celtics, and Brad Stevens actually gets promoted as the president of basketball operations at the Celtics, and then that means the GM spot and the head coach spot is vacant there. My quick thoughts on that. Congrats to Brad Stevens. That's great for him. Danny Ainge, I've had my critiques. You may not know him because I may not have said him publicly in the podcast, but I think he was a good GM. He was able to draft well. He drafted, of course, Brown and Tatum, and a few guys like Peyton Pritchard, of course, and Aaron Nesmith, which I've always preached, and Robert Williams, of course. He's a little bit of a project. It took 2 years to develop him, but now he's a really good starting center for us. So I think he did all right with drafting-wise. He has some bust draft. I guess you can say Romeo Langford's a bust, but I don't know. Again, with the drafting, it's okay, and I think some of the moves he made. The one thing I think a lot of people critiqued him on was that he was not very, ballsy, I would say, when it comes to signing players and making aggressive trades. And, that would suck, because I know there were some rumors that we were going to try to trade for AD, try to trade Tatum or Brown to get AD on the team and be a 1 year rental to get a championship. I don't know. That would have been a ballsy move. I don't know what my opinions are on that now, after realizing that we wouldn't have too much of a squad to support AD, but also AD would probably leave and go to the Lakers anyway. So maybe that wasn't really a trade they could have done. But overall, he was an okay GM. I think he was good for what he was, and he drafted well enough to get us where we are. And I think the main thing that made the Celtics good was Brad Stevens and his coaching and being able to develop young players. He had that college experience of developing young players and understanding talent and how to utilize them. So that's what he did with the Celtics, and now he's doing really well. He did really well with it for the past how many years. So to wrap up the Danny Ainge stuff. He was a good GM. I'm great. I heard he had a heart attack like a year ago. I didn't even know about. I probably did know about it. I probably forgot about it. But he had a heart attack a year ago on the job, and I think all the stress and stuff being like the Celtics GM is really torn him limb from limb, and all his mental fortitude down. And now he has to retire, which is understandable. But good run for Danny Ainge to win a championship as a player and as a front office guy. Good for him. But now let's move on to what the future holds for the Celtics, which is Brad Stevens as the president of basketball operations for the Celtics. So first thing we need to talk about is that the GM spot and the coach spot is now vacant. And this is what actually scared me, because I didn't want Brad Stevens to either leave or move to a different position, just because he's a great coach. I want to go over his coaching acumen real quick on the Celtics side at least. He's made 3 Eastern Conference Finals and made multiple semifinals, and he's brought us to the playoffs constantly as the coach of the Celtics. He had the run from 2016 to 2017 and 2017 to 2018. Both were playoff Eastern Conference Finals runs by the Celtics. Let me double check that. Yeah, he lost in the finals against LeBron in 2016, and then 2017, then 2018 playoffs. He lost to the Cavs and LeBron again. So he lost to 2 LeBron teams, which is understandable, especially when LeBron was on the Cavs in his prime with Kyrie and Kevin Love. So understandable why we lost. But also we had the Eastern Conference Finals last year in the bubble, which is, I've had my bubble talks of saying the bubble is not as hyped up as it should be, because I didn't think I thought the bubble was a fluke because we had the Miami Heat in the finals. That Heat team was great and all, but I wouldn't think it had much weight, and that's also why I critique on LeBron saying that he won a championship in the bubble, saying it was harder. I think it was easier just because the teams he had to face were a lot easier. He didn't have to face the Clippers. He didn't have to face the Bucks or the Sixers in the finals. So that was like my thing. It's not that the bubble environment. Of course, the bubble environment made it harder. Like, I'm gonna like finalize my take on this. The bubble environment was harder itself, but the teams he had to face in the bubble were not as hard or not as like difficult as it could have been for him for his championship to make it actually worthwhile. And like that's the two things I would say: environment and then the teams he had to face. So that's why I don't give LeBron credit for the bubble, and that's also why for the Celtics, I don't really give credit to the Eastern Conference Finals in the bubble. Of course, they beat the Sixers. You can say what you said. I think there were some players injured. I'm actually going to look at that right now before I say anything because I don't remember who was injured during that series, and I don't want to say anything dumb over that because that would be really bad. Let's see. So yeah, there was all the key players. Actually, no, the key players aren't Ben Simmons was injured. That's what it was. Ben Simmons was injured. So I guess you're playing a partly depleted Sixers team. And then you had to face the Raptors. They were good, but they didn't have Kawhi, so I don't count it. It was to Game 7. Raptors were still good. I think Pascal Siakam had his best year in the bubble. So, you could say that was difficult, and then you had to face the Heat, which was they were on a streak in the bubble. So we lost to that, and I mean, it was tough. And again, I think the bubble's a fluke, regardless of what most people say, but yeah, I mean, he brought us to 3 Eastern Conference Finals and brought us to multiple playoffs. So multiple playoff, contention runs to the semifinals, whatever, losing to the Bucks, for example, in 2018, 2019. And it's not. I think he's a great coach. I had a few criticisms about him. And then I realized looking at the researching him, like it's funny enough you have these like preconceived notions about players and coaches, etc., and then you actually do research on them and you realize how good they were. So, and of course, it's my coach, and I didn't do enough research clearly because he's actually a really good coach. And now the head of the basketball operations at the Celtics. And moving on with the basketball operations side of it, I don't know who's going to hire for the GM or coaching staffs. I really don't know because we're losing 2 debatably good people at those positions, and I don't know who could fill the role because currently on the NBA side, there's not really anyone I would want to hire unless you want to steal Tom Thibodeau from the Knicks. I don't know. I don't think the Knicks are giving up Tom Thibodeau, but point being is that there's no one I see as valuable, hiring right now, coaching and GM wise, to fill the role on the Celtics side. And you also have news like recently, Coach K actually retired on from the Duke Blue Devils, and earlier this year, Roy Williams retired from UNC. Those are the 2 people I do respect in the college scene. So, it's interesting seeing all these retirements and stuff this year, and that means also more roles to fill at other places. So that means more of those coaches that potentially could fill the role in the Celtics are being filled other places that have a little bit more prestige, especially at Duke of all places. So again, my last comment about that, I don't know who's gonna get signed, who the next coach and who the next GM is gonna be. We'll see what the reports say. We'll see what Woj said, because Woj did come out with this report this morning. Yeah, this morning, and along with the Coach K report this morning. So sad to see him go, but overall, good for Brad Stevens to gain the role. I'm happy for Danny Ainge retiring at the way he was. I mean, I think he built this team from the ground up, and is happy to have a good one last run before he retires as a GM. So that's good for him. But yeah, the next thing on the Celtics side, of course, is being eliminated by the Nets in 5. My first thoughts is it was really sad to watch this team play. It was really just grueling because I did not watch the win. I actually never watched Game 3. I actually watched Game 1, 2, and I was at Game 4 live at TD Garden, and I watched Game 5. So I watched all the losses. I didn't even watch the win. So it was really sad to see my Celtics play all the games that I did watch because they were all losses. But my initial thoughts was Game 1, because let's start with Game 1, for example. Game 1, the first half got me really hopeful that the Celtics could bring it to a Game 7 or even win, just because how well they were playing offensively and defensively. Like all the key points I said in my preview on the podcast, they executed really well in the first half of the first game. Then the second half came, and it all went downhill from there. Game 2, we lost. Game 3, we won. I think the Kyrie chances probably threw Kyrie off and everyone else on the Nets off, and they adjusted on Game 4 when I was there, and they blew us up by 15, and then you had, of course, Game 5, which is the closing, hurrah from the Celtics to just lose, and by how much, I don't remember because it was just that terrible of a game. 14, yeah, so double-digit losses on all of our games that we lost. Except for Game 1, I think. No, that was a 9-point loss. So basically almost a double-digit loss. And it's just hard to see. I thought we could put up a fight, and it didn't help that Tatum looks injured half of the time, and Kemba's injured, of course, and then Robert Williams has toe injury, so he's on and off. So it didn't help that we weren't fully healthy. But you have to understand that people get injured, and you have to work around that. So I think Brad Stevens did a good job for what he could have done. And I remember he said a quote after Game 4 is like everything he schemed, the Nets just played better just because of that big three. Again, Harden, Kyrie Irving, for how much Celtics fan completely harassed and harangued him the whole time he was at TD Garden, and of course Kevin Durant, a top 3 or top 5 player in the league. I don't know what else we could have done. I mean, if we had Jaylen Brown, I think we would have had a fighting chance. Our big three versus their big three, I think we would have had a chance to potentially win with those three going at it. But I don't know. I don't know what we could have done, and it was just tough to see because we didn't. It looks like we just gave up second half. Like each game, the second half of each game, it looks like we just gave up. So it didn't look like we put up effort, especially when people started getting injured. We had basically our bench unit running at the starting lineup sometimes. It was sad to see. But I think moving forward, as now with Brad Stevens at the president of basketball operations, we might have to take a step back just because we need to find a new coach and a new GM, and then we have to implement a new scheme with the new coach, along with the players have to get used to that new coach and their scheme, unless they have some sort of Brad Stevens clone, which I don't think that's going to happen. There's no one on my radar that's like a Brad Stevens clone that would be able to fit smoothly into the players that are currently on the roster. That also potentially means, I actually forgot to mention this when we were talking about the Brad Stevens stuff. Brad Stevens might have like a list of people that he might say like, yeah, you need to go type of deal, because he now has executive control on all that stuff, and my mic is now broken. I knocked it out of place. There we go. But yeah, he now has executive control of the franchise, so he could just start trading people right now if he really wanted to, because we don't have a current GM. He might take the GM role currently as a time being. He might start trading people. I don't know. Right as soon as the playoffs get finished, so. We don't know who's going to be here next season. Hopefully, a lot of Celtics fans are starting to say we need to trade Kemba, get off that contract, and maybe re-sign another guy, or we obviously have to re-sign Tatum. And a lot of people are saying Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum are the only safe people on the roster. Debatable, because I like Robert Williams, and I think he can develop even farther. And of course we'll have to re-sign him, and hopefully he doesn't ask for too much, so we can keep him under 20, 25 mil, keep him under that salary cap I put on him, and I think he'll be a really good center for us, like a Mitch Rob type. And obviously I think he'll be better on offense than Mitch Rob. So we'll see. That's like my thoughts. Trading Kemba, maybe. Everyone else is pretty much expendable. Even the young guys. I like Aaron Nesmith and I like Peyton Pritchard. I hope they could stay. I would like them to stay because they played really well, and I think we can develop them even further if we find the right coach. But if we don't find the right coach, that's going to be a problem, because I think I liked Brad Stevens as if he was a coach, not as a GM or a manager type. So we'll have to see who they hire and pray that it's somebody good enough for, I guess Celtics standards. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's over. I think now, especially hopefully we'll have the full squad next week for the podcast, and we can talk about, especially with the Suns and especially the Nets, to see how the next games move on, how the next set of games move on, and how everyone's going to be placed after this next round, this first round is finished. But yeah, I think the next games I want to talk about now are the Heat. I mean, wasn't much to talk about with the Celtics. There's no words to put on it other than terrible defense. And Tatum tried. He scored 50 on Game 3, which of course is the reason why we won, because he took over. But it was tough to see, like, everyone was shooting poorly. Actually, you know what? I want to continue on a little bit, because this is I was going to go on to the Heat being eliminated by the Bucks in 4 games, But I wanted to mention one more thing is that Marcus Smart, after Kemba went down, took the lead scoring guard role, which is a terrible idea for Marcus Smart after seeing it in this playoffs. And also during the season when Kemba was injured. Marcus Smart is not that type of scoring guard. Like, he's a great complementary guard. Like, he can still make his shots and stuff, but he also needs to have someone, like another guard, to take the pressure off of him so he's able to make those shots. He can't be the one making, like, fancy dribble moves, contested mid-ranges, and all that stuff like Kemba does. Leave that to Kemba. Let Marcus Smart be on the perimeter and play defense, do his thing. Yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to say because I had a little Marcus Smart like anger seeing him at Game 4 and Game 5 shoot terribly, and it was just why was that? Why did he do that? Anyway, let's go to the Heat game. The Heat series. They got eliminated in 4 by the Bucks, as I said earlier. My prediction was terrible because I had the Heat going in 7 because I really had high hopes on this Heat team and Spoelstra. I guess even with the bubble being a fluke, I thought Spoelstra was a great coach and he coached that team well in the bubble. So I really thought he would do really well. He would do well in this playoffs as well, but I guess he didn't. Quick water break. Anyway, my prediction went wrong. I mean, it didn't help. I mean, I thought Spoelstra would be able to game plan around, adding Drew Holiday to the team, which I think he did all right. Game planning around Drew Holiday. He didn't do the greatest job, but I think limiting Drew Holiday was good. I think he did all right. I mean, Drew Holiday still an amazing player, so don't hate on him, or not hate on him, but don't count him out as a really good guard for the Bucks, especially how he played this year, and especially Budenholzer. That's the one thing I realized. Budenholzer stepped up this year and actually made a really good game plan for the Bucks. That wasn't create a wall around the paint and pray that they don't shoot perimeter shots. He actually made some really good defensive schemes that really helped push the Bucks over the hump of being this terrible defensive schemed team, having terrible defensive schemes and having a one-minded offense through Giannis. Speaking of offense, I'm going to jump around a lot because there's a lot to talk about. Offensive wise, Chris Middleton stepped up in an amazing way for the Heat. He was able to score. I think he averaged about 20 points this whole series, 4-game series, and that's good for him because that means he can get some pressure off Giannis and be able to be that secondary scorer. Be that, I guess, if you want to bring it back to the Nets, he can be that hardened to the KD for the Bucks, and be able to help Giannis get some pressure off him, and also be able to be that reliable scoring threat. If Giannis is not able to find offense, you can give it off to Drew Holiday to be a playmaker and give it off to Middleton or some other players. Like I'm going to talk about later, Brian Forbes, and Bobby Portis, which played really well off the bench. Not to mention Brook Lopez was a little shoddy in the beginning of the series, but he really stepped up and played really good defense in the second half of the series against Bam Adebayo, which was my thought would have been that Bam Adebayo was stepped up and dominated in this series, but he didn't because Brook Lopez was there to stop him on offense, and on defense he tried his best, but Giannis is still unstoppable. And then having Chris Middleton to throw it to, if he's having trouble, you can see what happened. It was a terrible series. And speaking of Brent Forbes and Bobby Portis, Brent Forbes averaged 15 points this whole 4-game stretch. Not to mention he averaged 3 rebounds. That's really it. But he averaged 15 points, and that he really stepped up on the bench when the Heat team really didn't have much to go off of because Tyler Hero was spotty and all the guards were spotty. Because again, my mentality, Tyler Hero was terrible. He was averaging less than 10 points a game, and he was supposed to be that scorer off the bench for the Heat. And that also brings me to another point. Well, let me finish with Brian Forbes and Bobby Portis, and then we'll get to the Heat. Let's not stray away too far from the current topic. But let's go to Bobby Portis scoring 10 points, being that amazing center off the bench for the Bucks, while Brook Lopez was getting his rest and being able to get back in the game fully. I guess catching his breath and being able to get fully energized to face down Bam Adebayo and anyone who drove in the paint. And again, this Bucks team, after watching this series, gives me confidence that they can make a good run this year. If they don't face the Sixers. I'm taking a lot of breaks when I'm trying to speak. But yeah, if they don't have to face the Sixers, because I think the Sixers this year are a bigger threat than the Bucks, and I think that'll be a good fought game if it's Bucks versus Sixers. We'll see how that series goes. If it does come to that, I don't see anyone else seriously contending with those two teams. Other than the Nets, obviously. I'm just putting the Nets in a different bubble right now. I think they're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals guaranteed. I think one of those teams. Actually, wait. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Bucks will have to face the Nets, and Sixers will have to face probably the Hawks. They're probably going to win tonight. And that's an interesting combo. Actually, why did I even talk about Sixers versus Bucks? Because that means the Bucks would have to beat the Nets. And with the Nets, how well they played this series, I don't know how the Bucks are going to fare against the Nets. It could be a 7-game series. We'll go into our predictions next for the round 2 of the playoffs next week when all the rest of the the round 1 games finish. So we'll see how that goes with all those teams just finishing up their series. I think, first thoughts, I think the Nets are going to win. Why did I say Sixers versus Bucks? I don't know, but the Nets are going to win in 7 or 6. That's kind of what I see. But the Bucks could seriously push the Nets far with how well they played today. But let's move on to the Heat. And I just keep remembering I'm looking at the screen up top of my camera, not the lens, which I should be looking at y'all, not the damn screen. Anyway, let's move on to the Heat. The guards did not play well. That's the problem. And I think that's the key for every Heat victory was the 4-guard tandem of Kendrick Nunn, Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero, and Duncan Robinson. If they all played well and played the perimeter, that they were unstoppable. If they're able to cash in on those threes that they're all able to make, and having Bam Adebayo down in the paint, down low, if needed to, post up on somebody, that's a great team. And plus Jimmy is as a guy, he's a great leader and a great guy to have for like mentally and intangibles and everything. I always preach on tangibles. Jimmy has everything, untangible wise, killer mentality, leadership, pushing these young guys forward. And I don't put less on him now, even with the loss to the Bucks. I think they just need to take another year to develop these guys, and hopefully their timetables match up with Jimmy's age, and along with the young guys develop. Hopefully the young guys develop fast enough so that they can play well when Jimmy's still, usable at his age. Because I think Jimmy's about 20. No, he's 30 something. I can check his age right now. 31. So he has probably a couple more years, and hopefully those young guys can develop fast enough to play with Jimmy when he's still usable before he starts to fall off, assuming he falls off. Next thing I have to say about the Heat, I guess they really did miss at least last year's Jay Crowder. I mean, this year's Jay Crowder is all right, but they missed last year's Jay Crowder, having that another defensive guy, who's really, I guess a veteran and also really smart IQ guy out in the perimeter, and also he can easily guard power forwards, small forwards, and shooting guards, having those, I guess, that middle area of, guarding those guys. Of course, he can guard centers if he really tried, but I wouldn't put it to him at his age right now. But Trevor Ariza is not a bad stand-in for him, but he's not the same as Jay Crowder was last year. So it does suck to lose him. Dwayne Dedmon played really well. I think he played really well. I'm not going to say anything. Yeah, I mean, he played all right for what it was as a backup center, but I think it was funny enough. I think one of those games, Dwayne Dedmon popped off for so many points, and I remember, I always reference this YouTuber, Rusty Buckets. He said, like, if Dwayne Dedmon's, he was scoring so many, like, 20-plus points or whatever, and he was, like, the only one creating offense. And he said, if Dwayne Dedmon's the only person creating offense for you, what are you doing? Because he should not be the only person creating offense for you. And it's funny how he was, and that shows the Heat sometimes being stagnant on offense, still, trying to play the best on defense, but the Bucks just being crazy good on defense. Still, it's sad to see the Heat team go so fast and so quickly. I thought they were going to go in 7. They didn't go in 7, so that really screwed my prediction. All of my predictions for this whole first round of playoffs is going down the drain because it's funny enough. So yeah, I just got news that we got notifications while I was writing up the show notes for today. But the Sixers advanced, of course, in 5, which is what I thought, and the Hawks moved on. So I thought the Knicks were going to win in like 6 or 7 again. I was completely wrong. Trae Young just took over this series, and there was no, even with Tom Thibodeau and all this whole defensive unit for the Knicks, they couldn't hold him. Again, my predictions are going to crap. I will talk about the Knicks and stuff later, but let's just wrap up the Heat. I don't know what they could have done. Again, I didn't watch too many of their games because it was so quick, and I wanted to watch some of the games later because I thought it was going to go to 6, 7 games. So I thought I was going to watch, maybe I'll watch one today or tomorrow, but it's over. Bucks completely swept him, and the Bucks look like a real threat to the Nets in the second round. So that's how I'm going to close that. Let's go over some quick storylines in the NBA playoffs. One thing I actually want to talk about, because we talked about it last week, is that Clippers won both their games in Dallas, so now they're tied 2-2, which is surprising because after last week, all of us lost faith in the Clippers. Clippers decided to come back and put on a show for everybody and be able to win those last 2 games. Let me pull up the stats from the last game real quick so I can actually look at something while I'm talking about this. Nobody expected this. Both teams won their games, on the away court, which is surprising because you would think, being the Clippers and having a Staples Center, you would have at least some, have some I guess you have some fans come up and be able to, support their team and be able to make the crowd, make the crowd affect the game, but I guess not. I guess the away crowd, the crowds and the fans didn't do anything because they both won their games away on the away court. One thing we did criticize about Kawhi. I mean, Kawhi played really. I think played pretty well this whole series. I think his thing about PG not stepping up. He did step up. He did step up for what it was. Step up in like 15 points, and I guess in the game 3 he scored 30. So he's on and off. I don't know. Hopefully he can step up in the next few games because if the Clippers want to win, they need Paul George to step up. Also, not to mention, they're running a small ball lineup now with Nick Batum at center. They're probably Marcus Morris at center. I don't know how I feel about that, but whatever works, whatever gets them the wins recently with the small ball lineup, we'll see how that fares. Again, Luka, top 5 player in the NBA. I'm surprised they didn't win, but again, we talked about it last week. I'm going to talk about it again. There's something on my camera lens. All right. I don't know what that is. That's weird. Anyway, point being, we talked about Tim Hardaway being the X factor. Let's for example, game 4, he only scored 4 points. He was 1 for 8. Explains a lot because I had Tim Hardaway as the X factor. So I was hoping he would do really well. Let's see. He had 12 points, of course. He was 4 for 14, 12 points in game 3. So that just proves my point because I didn't really look at these. I'm going to go free-flowing on these little quick stories around the NBA. He's the X factor. I don't know what to say. Again, okay, what am I going to... My words... Oh, crap. I'm trying to put this into words. With the X factor not playing well, that's why he's the X factor. And now he's not playing well. Clippers won. There we go. I can't put that into goddamn words. But point being, if the X factor doesn't play well, he's supposed to be an X factor, they lose. So let's hopefully Tim Hardaway can step up in game 5, game 6, and game 7 if it comes to that. Pray it doesn't come to that. Oh, there's something on my lens. I think there's something on my lens. No, that's not a lens. All right. We're back. And I'm probably have to cut that out. But, oh my. But yeah, that's, again, we're going to go back to the X Factor part. He has to play well. That's all I'm going to say. Let's move on to the next thing. Sixers won. Obvious that's going to happen. Joel Embiid stepped up. And he was I think he was injured for part of the series. So, Sixers still played well. Tobias Harris, I think, was the main guy on the Sixers team that played really well in his absence and also just playing well in general. And I think surprisingly, Tobias Harris has played well this season compared to what he was in the previous seasons. That's all I'm going to say about it. Wizards, you put up a good fight. You won 1 game at home. That's all I could say. Get them next year. Wizards, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with this team with Russ. So, hopefully the Wizards will come back with something in next year. Then, of course, the Hawks. Hawks just won their game against the Knicks, so they won in 5. I'm very surprised. Actually, I was about to say I'm not surprised, but no, I'm very surprised about this because I did not predict this win at all because I had the Knicks in 7. Just because I thought, again, I think about me, I put coaching on a pedestal, and I love to put coaching as like one of the main reasons why a team will win. So I thought Tom Thibodeau with his defensive prowess would be able to lock down Trae Young and also be able to compensate for the other players, I guess, lack of speed or something like that. Maybe it's just finding a game plan that works to slow down or even stop Trae Young. That didn't happen. I was surprised because I watched a few of these games. Watching Trae Young play is, he's doing a lot less foul baiting, but he's still playing really well and distributing the ball amazingly. If that's even worse, but he's doing everything that the Hawks need him to do to get these wins against the Knicks. And the Knicks, it's hard to find offense without Julius Randle. I've noticed because, of course you have RJ Barrett playing, what he can, D Rose playing what he can. But the rest of the team, they're not amazing scorers. Like, they can't score 20, 25 a night like some bench players can for other teams. They can score 15 or something like that. Point being that the offense revolves around Derrick Rose and Julius Randle, which is a problem for the for the Knicks. And it could get worse. it could be worse, but it looks like I'm happy that they were able to make the playoffs in the first time since 2012. It's amazing for them to be finally in the playoffs. But yeah, that's really it. I don't know what else to say other than Trae Young blew up this playoffs. And LC had a really good supporting cast of Danilo Gallinari, Bogdanovich, Collins, Capella have all played really well this whole series. So I guess the Hawks could make some noise or push the Sixers to like 6 games at most, I would say. We'll go into predictions later. But yeah, congrats to the Hawks. They won. Congrats to the Sixers. They're going to play each other in the second round. We'll see how the Bucks Nets series go, because that's probably going to be the highlight series in the Eastern Conference for the next round. Let's go to the West real quick. Grizzlies, Jazz, I guess. I don't know. The West is. I think the West is pretty predictable, minus the Clippers. Oh, right. That's the game I was going to talk about. I do remember what I'm talking about. Nuggets versus Blazers. What happened? Double OT. Actually, tonight. I think it was last night. Double OT. Damian Lillard did all he could, but he's scored 55, still couldn't bring this team over the hump. 12 for 17 for 3. All these memes going around NBA Twitter saying like, can Damian Lillard still request a trade or whatever type of deal, and it's hilarious to see that these fans are like, Dame does not deserve this. He plays so well and deserves to play on a better team with a better supporting cast to be able to bring him to at least the finals or something notable. But with the Portland Trailblazers, the best thing you're gonna get is a second round exit. It's sad to see because they have talent, but they're not as good. Nurkic just came off his injury. He's been playing terrible. Apparently, one stat line that someone threw out was he's averaged 5. He was I think he had 25 total fouls this whole series, and he's averaging about 5 fouls per game, which is pretty bad. So he's been playing, I guess, worse than he was before the injury. McCollum's doing his best, but he's not a great two-piece like Chris Middleton, for example, when we're talking about him versus the Bucks. Yeah, Norman Powell trade, I don't know if that even benefited the Blazers in this one. I don't know what would have happened if they had Gary Trent. Carmelo Anthony did what he did. He's not what he used to be, I guess. He averaged 12 points this series. I think the Nuggets, of course, I had the Nuggets winning, so I'm not surprised, but still, I think the Nuggets will be able to pull away a win in Portland tomorrow, or not tomorrow. I think Friday's their next game. I'm gonna actually double check that right now while I have the ESPN app. Yep, it'll be on tomorrow. Actually, interesting. They're playing a back to back. No, they're not playing back to back. They're playing yesterday, so they're playing tomorrow. in Portland. So I think they're going to win in Game 6, and then the Nuggets move on. And, with all this stuff coming to close, I'm going to just quickly read off what the bracket's going to look like in the next round, which we'll talk about next week extensively about how the performances of each team went, and who we think are going to win, of course, and what about the teams that are eliminated, what happens next for them. Yeah, I mean, so we have Philly and Atlanta, and on the top of the Eastern Conference semifinals, and then we have Brooklyn and Milwaukee, so Bucks versus Nets, and I think I think Denver's going to win. I think it's funny enough, I think the Suns are going to win. I had Suns in 7, and with the AD's injury, it might be Suns in 6. I'm still going to keep Suns in 7. I'm going to keep good to my quick change in my prediction, and I think Suns in 7. And, of course, Denver in 6, so that means Denver versus Phoenix. And then current predictions, I have Utah versus Dallas, or, the Mavericks. So we'll see how that prediction lasts. All my predictions have completely fallen apart. My first predictions, of course, my pre-playoff predictions have all fallen apart. So, of course, except for the 1 and 8 seed game. So I don't know. I guess predictions are never always a good, I never try to trust predictions. I like to make them for fun, to see if I'm right. But I'm 90, 80. I guess I'm like a 50-50. No. I would say I'm 70-30 wrong. I'm more wrong than right, just because predictions don't actually come true. There's so many factors that come into predictions, injuries, coaching mistakes. All this stuff could happen that could ruin your prediction. So don't put so much weight on predictions. Just watch the games and figure out what they did well, and see how this series could potentially play out with the current data that you do have. But yeah, I mean, that's it for the Celtics side. I don't have much else to talk about, minus we did talk about the breaking news with Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge. We talked about the Celtics getting eliminated. We talked about the Heat getting eliminated. The big things I wanted to talk about were out of the way. Next week, round 2 will start, and I hope we'll see you all there next week. So, peace.